Well, it's time now to take a look at the overall markets picture in Kenya. Recapping on things as it played out in yesterday's session, we had the main NSE 20 share index dipping back 0.2% to end just above 4,708 points, and that as investors await the outcome of Raila Odinga's petition. So things very tentative on this end, leaving a lot of sellers with no buyers, traders saying, and this performance that we saw yesterday marking the 7th straight down day. Defeated presidential candidate Raila Odinga on Saturday, remember, challenged the result of the March the 4th election, and the Supreme Court is due to rule on it by the end of next week. If it orders a rerun of the election, that could pile pressure on the Kenyan shilling. Remember, yesterday we had the shilling already edging lower as importers bought dollars ahead of the usual month-end rush. The shilling has been trading within a pretty tight band of between 85 and 86 against the dollar this week. While it has been relatively stable, it could be vulnerable though. The shilling, remember, is up 0.4% against the dollar so far this year, helped by a rally just before the vote as investors bet that the ballot would pass off peacefully. So that a broad look at the market's performance. Let's get into some analysis now, and joining us from our Nairobi studios this morning is Rufus Mwanyasi, who's an independent analyst. Rufus, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We'll get on to what you're making of the results, earnings and the earnings season, but before we do, let's take a look at what you're making of market performance right now, because as I said, investors seeming to be very tentative as we await the outcome of Raila Odinga's petition.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Well, we've seen a correction largely driven by the uncertainty regarding the petition that is still there with the courts concerning the election that we just had. So I guess I think the market is just sitting on the sidelines, awaiting the verdict. And I think until then, we're just likely to see the market go on a range. Perhaps we may see just dance around 4,700 to about 4,800 for the time being.
Okay, so how are you digesting in this context the kind of earnings reports that are filtering through from corporate Kenya? Because as we've just heard, Samir Africa out with results, profit after tax on that end up 96%. And what is encouraging is that we've seen the company managing to get a handle on its raw material costs via better sourcing, the company's CEO saying, but still challenges persist, and that coming through from things like cheaper imports.
Well, that's correct, and maybe not just comment about Samir Africa alone, as you pointed out that we're actually in the middle of an earnings season. But I think what is really trapping investors right now is really the whole political scene. I might just say that political risk is really elevated by now, and I think the market is really thinking should we just start positioning ourselves in the market on the basis of the good results that we're seeing from the market, or do we wait until this whole political overcast is over? And I think that's just the debate that the market is having right now. And personally, what I've observed is the market is really moving based on sentiment rather than the fundamentals that are coming out from the from the results. So until then, I think sentiment is largely going to drive the market until as we say, the verdict by the Supreme Court is done.
Therein, though, lying some of the opportunity for investors who are brave enough to delve into the markets, Rufus. So where are some of those buying opportunities emerging as, majority of the investment community remain on the sidelines?
Well, I think right now what we've seen is huge flows into so-called defensive stocks, and we're talking about some of the utility stocks like Kenyan and a bit of construction stocks like At the River Mining and Bamburi stocks, and the rest is choosing to place their bets on the banking sector, and I think in my view, I think that's what we're going to see money flowing to at least for the for the next 2-3 weeks. And until the verdict comes out, then we might see more riskier bets to towards more the mid cap and small cap stocks in the market.
What about players within the construction space, Rufus? We've had traders over the past week or so saying that their attention has shifted swiftly onto the cement players, for example, and that on the back of the kind of infrastructure plans that Kenya is currently underway with. Arm Cement reporting on Wednesday a 31% increase in pre-tax profit for last year, and that on the back of a surge in cement sales, and that providing nice incentive as well.
Yeah, you're right. Largely what we've noticed is, the construction boom is still ongoing, and not only in this country, but in the rest of the region. And I think some of the players that we've seen come out, like for instance, the River Mining 2 days ago, with 39% rise in their revenue, meaning that cement sales are actually quite strong. And we're just looking at at the whole sector. We think that from the announced infrastructure development programs all across the region, I think that is going to lend support to the industry. And I think going forward, we're likely to see more strong profitability in that sector. So I guess right now, yes, some of the stocks that we're recommending is actually in the stock in the construction stocks, in the likes of the River Mining, the likes of Bamburi Cement.
And East African Portland Cement as well. So if you're looking at those three major players in the market, Rufus, how are you ranking them right now in terms of the value proposition they're putting on the table, and that relative to their valuations on the market?
Well, first of all, maybe just to maybe just categorize it into two. Maybe for retail investors, we'll be telling them to go for the River Mining because it's relatively cheaply priced, and they just fresh from doing a split of 10-1, and I think in that regard, I think it's you get a good value there. Bamboo is also a good stock, just next in line, and we think going forward, what we're basing on majorly is on the strength of their market share and on the fact that they've really been busy on building up their capacity and really streamlining their operations, and in just to improve their efficiencies. Well, for East African Portland, it's not really on our recommended list because there's still some internal issues that they still need to iron out. So out of those three, I think we're only going for two: River Mining and Bamboo stocks.